Hi, my name is Chris Body. I'd like to take you through a demo of an alpha version of an application we are building at Children's. The scenario is this. Consider that we have a REDCap project in the REDCap application that would like to have data pulled from the medical record system and brought right into the project on some regular interval. So the way this is going to be set up is that an SQL will be developed. It will run on some scheduled basis, query the medical record system, and then bring that data automatically into REDCap without having to be verified or adjudicated. So this is a non-adjudicated transfer of data application that will allow project to run different SQLs and on some regular interval bring data into their respective REDCap projects. So consider this example here. We have 4 REDCap projects. All the record counts are 0. In this scheduler project, we have a mechanism by which we can assign to some project. We will notify REDCap what SQL should run. We will tell REDCap what the frequency of this particular job should be. We'll know who the primary contact is, and we'll also use a verified API token that's associated with the project lead or the PI for the study. So if the PI leaves or there's a change in the API token, this job will no longer run, which is a nice security feature. It will keep track of when the next scheduled executions are, what the last successful one was, what the last failed one was, and there'll also be a log file. In a moment, I will show you this, but if you can imagine for a moment that each SQL can be very different for each project. So what REDCap, what we're going to allow it to do in our little application here is a mapping file. We're going to allow a mapping file to be inserted in between the SQL and the transfer of data so that the data coming in from the source system can be mapped and translated to the data that are in the structure that is required inside of REDCap. The way that file looks is as such. If you take a look here, what we really have is a bunch of pairs. So we have a source field called ID, and this all tag means that we're going to take all the data that is inside this field in the SQL and transfer it to a study ID field, and we're going to do that for all values. If you look at a field like gender, this tells us that there's going to be a gender field that has 2 values in the SQL, M and F, and it's going to be translated to the gender field inside of REDCap with values of 11 and 22 respectively. If you look here, something like systolic BP can be mapped to SBP. So we can not only change the code to which the REDCap source, we can not only change the code by which we are going to map data point to, but we can also change the actual field name. So if we have a different field name in our source than we do in REDCap, that can be resolved. We'll also have a mechanism that will allow, it's an else all concept, which means that, for this value, or for this particular field Q1, if we encounter a value of 1386 in the SQL, we're going to map that to 11 inside of REDCap. Any other value for Q1 is going to go to a value called 99 in REDCap or other. So this is a nice way to sort of help with that particular mapping scheme. So what winds up happening, just to sort of recap, is that every project has an SQL that's customized for that project. Every project has some sort of frequency and some sort of kickoff date. And then what winds up happening is every file then gets or every project then gets a mapping file. And what will happen is that SQL will run, be filtered through the mapping file, and then actually be transported into REDCap using the correct codes, okay? So the way we've set this up is we've gone ahead and scheduled 4 projects. And 2 of these are going to run fine, 2 of these are going to crash for various reasons in our little test environment. But this is just to make sure that we catch all the mistakes and issues and whatnot. So what we're going to do, we're just going to run this, and we are still in alpha and testing, so there's going to be some output. that just tells us that it's running fine. So that tells me that it's running fine. But more importantly, when I refresh this screen, you will see that what winds up happening is that we have 3 successful runs here. All of the projects 40, 42, and 44 were successfully updated. And because this is a weekly job, now the next one's going to be on the 25th. This is a daily job, so the next one's on the 19th. And this is a monthly job, so the next one will be on February 18th. Okay? So when we look at this, we can real quickly just run these jobs. If you look at number 4, we have a failure. I said there were going to be 2 out of the 4, but it was really 3 out of the 4 that ran fine. We have a failure here, and then we can just kind of go look at this project to see what might have happened. And we see here that we have an all code found with other mapped entries. So we have some incompatibilities in the mapping file, which is good. This is what REDCap should do. But just to sort of show you how this worked, if you notice, the 3 jobs that ran fine all have the data, okay? And the job that was broken or had a bad mapping file does not have any data. And this is exactly what it should do. So our administrators will be using a little dashboard to sort of figure out where projects have left and which ones have failed. They'll very quickly be able to see which ones have failed. But essentially, we're loading an SQL file, we are loading a mapping file, and we're telling it to go and run this SQL at certain intervals and pull that data across. And we rely on the mapping file to do the translation. Because that translation can be different for each project, we can then use this sort of generic approach where we put some of the complexity into the mapping file, but use a very simple structure on the transfer of the data. So this is what we have. Hope you find it helpful and useful. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.